Back on the record in the case People versus Brandon Martin, RAF 1506112. Record should reflect Mr. Martin is present with both counsel. The people are present. All members of the jury and alternates are present. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
We are ready to get started. Next witness for the people.
Thank you. People call Officer Bejines.
Solemnly state that the evidence you shall give in the matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state and spell your first and your last name for the record.
First name is Robert. Last name is Bejines, spelled B-E-J-I-N-E-S.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Officer Bejines.
Good afternoon.
All right, so I see that you're wearing looks like a tactical vest as well as a shirt with patches on the side. You're a sworn peace officer.
Correct.
For?
City of Corona.
For how long?
I've been in City of Corona for 12 years.
What is your assignment?
Currently, I'm assigned to the school as a school resource officer, but no school, so.
So why the uniform? For us?
No. I'm still there. I got to protect the principals and staff and everybody else. I visit the children who aren't logging on to school or not.
Okay. Must be an easy job for you right now. All right. Now, did you have this different assignment, though, back on September 18th, 2015?
Yes.
All right. And what was that assignment?
I was assigned to a multi-agency task force. We basically did probation, parole searches, and any other. We wrote our own warrants. We did investigations on our own. Okay.
And did you have to wear a uniform doing that?
I did, sir.
Okay. Now, specifically on September 18th, 2015, at right around 9:40ish in the morning, did you see something significant that alerted your attention?
Yes, sir.
What was that?
The night before, I remember reading on our MDC computer. It's in our unit. We were in Riverside. I remember reading of a possible homicide in our city. So I kind of went through the whole call and read various things that occurred that evening. And one specific one was a vehicle was taken.
Okay. And was there some sort of, do you know what a BOLO is?
Yes.
What's a BOLO?
It's a be on the lookout bulletin.
And was there one regarding a vehicle?
Yes, there was.
Okay. And what vehicle was that?
It was a white Ford Raptor.
And around 9:40 in the morning, did you see that Ford Raptor?
I did.
Or did you see, I should say, did you see a Ford Raptor?
I did see a white Ford Raptor.
Okay. And when you saw that Raptor, what did you do?
So the way I was positioned, I was facing it head on, and I copied the plate down, and before I put anything on the radio, because I called my dispatch first on cell phone.
Okay. Where were you when you saw the Ford Raptor?
I was traveling westbound on Upper at Main. That's a four-way stop, and the vehicle was facing me, so it was going. It was actually in the left-hand turn pocket to go northbound on Main. It's by the fire station.
Working in Corona, I understand that I'd assume that you're pretty familiar with Corona, is that right?
Correct.
Showing you people's 241. I'm going to zoom in. You see the area of Upper where you were located? When you and if not, just let me know and I can move the map.
I'm trying to figure, so that's Main Street, Woodville. So this is the park, and this area here is where I saw the vehicle.
Okay. So that red dot is Mountain Gate Park, is that correct?
Correct.
And then you stated that you saw the Ford Raptor around the upper, where, can you show the jury where upper is?
Yeah, this is upper, which eventually turns into Lincoln. And this is Main Street. You can't see the name here, but that area right there, right here, there's a four-way stop. And I know there's a small little park there. We don't really have a name for it.
Okay.
But this is the four-way stop where I first saw the vehicle.
So when you were there, what were you driving?
I was driving an unmarked unit. It was a white Ford Fusion.
Okay. That unit have overhead lights?
It doesn't.
Does it have any light? Does it have any patrol type lights?
It just has one red forward-facing light, and that's for the emergencies only, if anything.
Okay. And where is that located?
It's located right under my rearview mirror.
But for facing,
Forward-facing, correct.
forward-facing. Okay. So the vehicle, does it have a siren?
It does.
When you saw the Ford Raptor, you said that you requested from dispatch the license plate number of the what you understood was a stolen Ford Raptor. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did you actually receive that license plate?
So when I called them on the phone, I asked if the vehicle taken in last night's incident was recovered. They said no, and I said, okay, run this plate for me, at which point they did, and they said that's the car.
Okay. Now, when you learned that that was the vehicle, did you attempt to conduct a traffic stop?
At that point, no, because I was in an unmarked car.
What difference does that make?
It's kind of hard for the person that I'm trying to stop to know if I'm a police officer or not. I mean, the red light should indicate something, but sometimes it doesn't.
Okay. Were you wearing a uniform?
Correct, yes.
Okay. But for them to even see your uniform, you have to be able to stop, which means they have to be able to stop.
Correct.
Okay. And you being in an unmarked vehicle does not really alert them enough that you are a peace officer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So now, since you're in an unmarked vehicle, what did you decide to do?
I immediately told dispatch that I was going to go to the radio so that I could now communicate with the entire department, and which I did, and I identified myself over the radio, and then dispatch already had provided information that at that time my call sign was PAC 14, that I was following that vehicle.
Okay. So you're following the vehicle and you announce to dispatch that you've located the vehicle.
Correct.
So, and do you know, could you hear if dispatch notified other patrol units that you're following the vehicle as well?
Yes.
Okay. And did you continue to follow the vehicle?
I did.
Where did the vehicle, well, let me back up. At some point, another patrol unit, a marked patrol unit, also began following the vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. And around what location was that?
You want to use the map?
Sure.
So,
And this is still People's 241.
It is.
can we minimize it a little bit? So, sorry.
Sure. And actually,
other way?
oh, zoom out?
Yeah, zoom out, minimize. Zoom out. Okay, that's fine. So this is Mountain Gate Park. In here, which is kind of hard to see, there's a small, it's a junior high, Citrus Hill Intermediate. So when I started following the vehicle northbound, I immediately saw a unit coming out of the parking lot, and I notified dispatch that there's a unit in the area, at which point that unit took a while, but it finally figured out what was going on and got into the in front of me.
Okay. So now I'm going to jump just a little bit ahead. At some point, did that unit conduct a traffic stop?
Yes.
Okay. And did the Raptor pull over and stop?
Correct.
Okay. And Showing you people's 237. Looking at this photograph, does that map illustrate the location in which that traffic stop was conducted?
Yes.
And this map shows the area of Mountain Pass Drive and Bainbridge Circle. Is that right?
Correct.
The red square or rectangle in that exhibit, do you see that on
Yes,
Bainbridge?
I do.
And would that be approximately the location where the Raptor was when it stopped?
Yes.
Okay. Were you also assisting in that traffic stop?
I was, because the officer was alone at that point.
Okay. And would that be Officer Velasco?
Correct.
Prior to, you said that you were behind Officer Velasco before the traffic stop, is that right?
Correct.
When she initiated the traffic stop, did she activate her overhead lights?
Yes.
And that's when the Raptor pulled over?
Correct.
All right. Now, when Officer Velasco stopped, where were you?
So this car is facing, which would be kind of a northeast direction where the Raptor is. We followed it in the cul-de-sac, made a U-turn, and she parked offset from the vehicle so that she could see the driver. And then I parked directly behind her and started getting my equipment.
Okay. Did you have your forward red light activated?
I can't remember if I did or not.
Okay. And you said once you stopped, you started to do what?
I started giving out information on where exactly we stopped, the exact address where we stopped, so that vehicles knew where we were exactly at.
And were you inside or outside of your vehicle?
I was standing outside the passenger door of my vehicle.
Was your passenger door open or shut?
It was open.
Why was it open?
Technically, we don't know the person that's in the car. At this point, we committed what we call a felony stop. It's a high-risk stop. We don't know if the person in the vehicle is armed or is going to be cooperative, or we don't know what's going on. So we're technically trained to hide behind that A-pillar, or that pillar behind the door and the door jamb, in case it's probably the only strongest part of those cars that would stop any kind of bullet or anything like that if we were shot at.
Okay. Did you have a gun?
I did.
Did you have your gun out?
I did.
Were you giving any commands to the driver of the Ford Raptor?
I wasn't.
Okay. Was anybody else?
Officer Velasco was giving them commands.
Okay. And were those commands to have the driver put his hands outside the window?
Correct.
And did the driver initially comply with those commands?
Yes.
At some point, did another vehicle arrive?
Yes. The second marked patrol unit arrived. It was Officer Drowley.
Okay. And where did Officer Driley go?
Officer Drowley arrived right here where this X is at and stopped, at which point I told him to stand by where he was at because we had a crossfire, basically a crossfire situation, meaning if he shoots in and we shoot out, we could have mass casualties.
So in other words, there's like a backdrop issue, is that right?
Correct.
All right, meaning if you shoot towards any suspect that's threatening you, threatening your life, you may hit a fellow officer.
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
All right, and so what happened? So now that Officer Driley is at the scene, what happened, if anything, with regard to the Ford Raptor?
At the time that he was sitting by at this little intersection, my focus was basically watching, making sure he didn't commit to coming in here and we get into that situation. Officer Velasco continued to give the suspect or subject orders. The car then slowly starts taking off from the curb and begins to drive, which is a southeast direction.
Okay. And you said that the Ford Raptor left slowly. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Did it gain speed?
At times it did, yes.
Okay. And at times, was it going at a high rate of speed for the area?
For the area, yes.
Okay. Now, would you call this a high-speed pursuit that you were involved in with the other officers?
We would call it a pursuit. based on the circumstances of some CMC violations, speeds, it's hard to determine what's an unsafe speed. 45 miles per hour can be an unsafe speed if you're driving erratic. So we determined that we called it a pursuit.
Okay. A high rate of speed or a high rate pursuit, are we talking about like 100 mile per hour plus?
About 100 miles per hour, I mean, yes.
Okay. Was this anywhere near that?
No.
Okay. But what type of zone is this area?
So this whole area here is houses, so it's 25 miles per hour. Most of the area around Mountain Gate is about 35 miles. There's nothing there over 40, 45 miles an hour.
Okay. Now, in the area where the cul-de-sac is and areas where there's houses on both sides of the street, what zone would that be?
These would be 25. These are residential.
And at times, was the Raptor going 45 miles per hour-ish?
Yes.
Now, jumping ahead, when the Ford Raptor left, who was the first one in pursuit?
Officer Velasco was the first one, and then I let Officer Crowley get in behind her. So we had two marked units behind them, and I stood just as overwatch.
And why were you overwatch rather than one of the pursuing units?
Because of the unmarked vehicle.
Again, since you're an unmarked vehicle, you're not really one to engage in a pursuit. Is that correct?
Unless I see some safety reasons, I can make that judgment myself. I can say that I need to stay with them as a third party or a third vehicle. At that point, I knew I had to stay with them because we didn't know what the situation was.
Okay. And your state of mind at that time was that this was a potential homicide suspect. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you didn't know if that person had any weapons?
I did.
Did you know how many weapons?
I did not know.
Or what type of weapons?
Did not know.
These were all unknowns to you?
Right.
All right. So you made the decision to basically engage as a third party?
Correct.
So at some point the pursuit ended, is that right?
Yes.
Where did it end?
Actually,
I'll go back to People's 241. If you can see.
Can we zoom in this area right here a little bit? Just a little bit lower. I mean, can we bring it down this way, other way? That's fine. I got it right here. So the end of the pursuit ended in the area of High Grove and Buena Vista.
And I see that you're pointing at a red dot there, so I'm actually going to zoom out, and that would be the location where it's actually labeled arrest made.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Again, just to get a little bit of information, are you familiar with the location of the Winthrop residence?
Yes, where the original, yes.
Right, where the suspected homicide was.
Yes.
And do you see that location on the screen?
I do. It's right here, which it's probably about maybe half a mile from the location.
Okay.
Maybe more.
And this will probably be more relevant down the line. But do you know of a Carl's Jr. that's in the Albertsons shopping center on Foothill?
I do.
And will you show that to the jury where that's located?
So his name. So in here, right here, this is the Albertsons parking lot.
And it's also depicted as Carl's Jr.
Correct.
All right. And then Carl's Jr. is actually very close to Mountain Gate Park, is that correct?
Yes.
Just north of it.
Yes.
All right. And are you familiar with the high school, Santiago High School?
Yes.
And where is that located?
That's going to be on this side of Foothill, closer to the 50 freeway.
All right. And then an Arco gas station in Corona over by, well, do you see the label there?
Yes.
By the 15?
Yes.
All right. All right, so you go to the location where the vehicle pursuit ends. Is that correct?
Yes.
And are you the first, second, third?
I'm the third vehicle behind it.
All right.
Well,
And
yes.
did you see the Raptor when you arrived to the scene?
I did.
Where it stopped?
Correct. I did.
All right. And then after the Raptor stopped, did you see the driver of the vehicle?
I did.
And can you tell us a little bit about that?
So at the termination of that pursuit, or where it ended, I saw the subject get out of the vehicle and start running northbound on one of the.
And you're familiar with that area?
I am.
Okay. When you saw the suspect leave and start going on towards Buena Vista, what did you do?
I immediately went around, because it was a collision between a unit and the Raptor. I went around both units and the Raptor and followed the subject. While he was running, I was on my unit, or my car.
Okay. And were you able to stop him?
No.
Where did the subject go?
He went over it was like an old wooden brown fence behind a residence in Buena Vista.
Do you recall if the subject was wearing anything on his or her head?
He had a baseball cap on.
Okay. What color?
I think it was the Oakland A's, so green.
Green and?
Green and yellow.
Okay. So now you're pursuing the subject who's now on foot, but you're in your vehicle.
Yes.
Were you able to see where the subject went to?
Once he jumped the fence, I lost sight of him, and at that point, I didn't see any additional units yet, so I didn't have enough to set up a perimeter to try to. So what I did was I went on Derby and started driving kind of around with my siren on to see maybe if I could kind of keep him in a certain area.
When did you turn your siren on?
It was during the whole pursuit.
Okay. And could you tell if other sirens were on as well?
I could hear. I probably hear the one in front of me because I ride with the windows up so that we need to hear the radio, so I really couldn't tell.
Okay, but you know yours was on for sure.
Yes.
All right. And okay, so you're now on Derby Street with your siren on. Are you kind of going back and forth on Derby?
Yes.
Why are you on Derby?
I'm just trying to see if I could. So as he goes over that fence, I'm just trying to see if I could get him to backtrack maybe, or keep him in an area where I could get him to bed down. So almost like a scare tactic to make it sound like there was more cars there than just one. So I just kind of drove around the area to just make a lot of noise to see if I could kind of keep him in that area.
During this time, are there other units now responding to around that location?
Yes.
At some point, did you go to a house located at 858 Derby Street?
Yes.
Showing you People's 113. Is that the residence?
Yes.
Why did you go to that particular residence?
We were told. So I was parked way on this side.
You're pointing to the right side of the exhibit.
Right. I was parked this way. I was parked along that side, and we were told we already had perimeter units set up behind the house, like in that area. Kind of just looking. At this point, we didn't have really an area to lock them down.
Sorry, can you use the microphone there in front of you? Thank you.
So at this point, we really didn't have an area to we didn't know exactly where he entered or where he was at the time. So perimeter units were they were showing up. We're starting to peek over fences, and we're able to pinpoint that house.
Okay. So now you go to 858 Derby.
Yes.
Where do you go at 858 Derby?
At that point, some of my other task force members started arriving, and we kind of set up right here.
So you're pointing to the front of the driveway?
Correct.
In the street?
Yes.
So how many, you said other units are arriving, other officers, is that correct?
Yes.
How many officers are now at the location in front of the house?
In front of the house, maybe 10. Maybe more than that, but 10, safely say 10.
Okay. And are there others behind the house?
Yes.
And what about the flanks or the sides of the house?
Yes.
Okay. So is it safe to say that the house at 858 Derby is now completely surrounded?
Yes, it's contained at that point.
Do you know if there were any other types of units, such as a helicopter?
I know we requested assistance, and I remember during the apprehension that there was one overhead. We didn't know it was a news, or because we didn't have comms with them yet.
Okay. So, but could you see a helicopter or hear one?
I could.
Okay. Now, at some point, you make way from the front of the residence towards either inside or towards the residence. Is that right?
Yes. So as we're setting up here, we had our SWAT vehicle, our ARVs, parked right here.
Okay, you're pointing to the front
Driveway?
of the driveway.
The driveway, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we were set up here, and while we were discussing how we were going to either enter the house, we were trying to make phone calls into the house to see, number one, anybody's home. There's no hostages being taken. So a lot of things are in play at this point because our rear perimeter person tells us that there's somebody, that he went inside the house.
Why don't you just go and knock on the door?
At that point, knocking on the door can probably worsen the situation as far as now it's more of a fight or flight kind of situation, if that makes sense, where if I'm knocking on the door, this guy knows we're there, and he could probably turn into a different person at that point.
Okay.
Possibly hurt somebody.
All right. So did you have any way to confirm whether he was inside the house?
Yes.
How?
So as we were discussing what our plan was going to be to enter the house, we actually saw him standing right here.
Okay, so you're pointing to the window above the small garage.
Correct, right here.
All right. And what was he doing?
He was just standing there. I identified him by his hat.
Okay. The yellow and green hat?
Yellow and green hat, correct.
All right. So that was the same, you knew that was the same suspect that was in the Ford Raptor?
Yes.
All right. And did you call out to him, make any commands, talk to him?
At that point, we didn't yet.
Okay.
But we were able to determine he was in the house.
All right. So now that you know that he's in the house, what do you do?
As we're getting ready, as we're staging here to walk in a kind of like a conga line into the backyard, we're notified that he is down in the backyard.
Okay. And showing you People's 114. Do you see this photograph?
Yes, sir.
And on the ground, did you notice anything on the ground that may belong to that window?
Screen.
Okay. And is it known to you that that's the area that the suspect went out of the house?
It wasn't known to me until after.
Okay. But where you went, is this the side of the house where you went?
Yes.
And was the suspect on that side of the house?
Correct. He was on the ground when we got there.
Okay. Where were you in the line? Were you in the line that went back there?
I was probably number 2 or 3.
Okay. So you had a pretty good view as to what was going on.
I did.
So now that you guys are on the which side of the house is this?
So we call it the 2 sides. So it would be the east side of the house. We're coming up the east side.
Going back to the previous exhibit, 113, which side of the house?
So we come from this point to that small ped gate on that side.
Okay, so looking at this exhibit, it would be on the left side.
Correct.
All right. As you make your way to the left side, you now see the suspect. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what was the suspect doing when you arrived?
He was on the ground, laying down with his back towards us, motionless.
Okay. And did you call out to the suspect?
At that point, our canine officer did.
Okay. And who's your canine officer?
It was Corporal Bennett at the time.
All right. And what is Corporal Bennett saying to the subject?
He's basically asking for compliance. We don't know if he's unconscious. We don't know what happened. So we're asking him to show us his hands.
Okay. And are you getting any answer back from the subject?
No.
Is the subject showing hands?
No.
And as an officer in this particular situation, why do you care if the subject is on their stomach that you want to see their hands?
At this point, he has not been searched. It's obvious that he's fleeing, and we were able to identify, or somebody was able to identify that that was a person, wanted in connection with the homicide.
Okay. And as an officer, why does that matter?
Because he could have been armed. He could have been armed and waiting for us to approach him and maybe injured a couple of officers.
And the way that you approach this situation, would it be different than somebody, let's say, was a possession of stolen property?
It all depends. If they're compliant, it goes a long way. If at this point we weren't getting any compliance.
Okay. But in your state of mind, did you understand that this is a potentially dangerous individual?
Yes.
And particularly so because this person is a suspect of a homicide, or actually multiple homicides.
Correct.
Now, when you are not getting compliance, is it multiple officers, or is it just Corporal Bennett that is engaging in these commands?
Usually when we do things like this, we always assign one officer. Usually it's the canine officer that takes total control of the commands because of the dog.
Okay. And why not have like every officer in that line start screaming out to him?
It's the situation with the dog. The dog starts acting really weird, and it's kind of takes his focus off the person that we're focused on.
So it can confuse the dog.
Correct.
All right. So you have the dog handler that's giving commands, and why do you even have a dog there?
Again, it's because he was considered a felony suspect.
Well, you have less lethal means of making somebody comply. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Such as a baton.
Baton, yes, sir.
Or a taser.
Yes, sir.
Beanbag gun?
We don't use that anymore, but we have the rubber bullets, the 40 millimeters.
Okay. And did you have that at the time on September 18th?
I can't recall somebody deployed that.
Okay. But those are other less lethal force options that you have.
Yes.
Okay. But also the canine is as well.
Yes, sir.
What use is the canine?
It doesn't put an officer at risk, even though the dog's part of the team, and they're just a tool. It's just like a beanbag gun or a 40 millimeter. They're trained to apprehend suspects.
And you saw this particular dog at that time?
Yes, sir.
Showing you people's 208. Does that canine look familiar to you?
Yes, sir.
And, I believe his name's Dex?
Dex.
All right. Now, so Dex is there to try to assist in gaining compliance on the subject. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So what is Corporal Bennett yelling to the subject before Corporal Dex is engaged?
He, again, asking him for compliance, asking him to show us his hands.
And multiple times?
Multiple times, yes, sir.
Was there any warning that to the effect of, hey, listen, guy, if you don't do what we say, then my dog's going to come and get you, basically, or bite you?
I can't recall if he asked him that, but with the dog barking, usually with the dog barking, it kind of makes that person think twice about what they're going to do. Okay.
So and how far away is Dex from the subject?
I say at that point we're probably about 25 feet from the subject.
And why not 5 feet away?
Again, we don't know if he was armed with a firearm or anything, so we wanted to still have some kind of cover, and so we used the corner of the house. So we were able to see him, but we weren't exposing ourselves to anything at that point.
Okay. Was the subject being compliant in any way?
At that point, no.
Okay. And so at some point was I almost called the dog Corporal Dex. Is the dog actually an officer? They have a little badge?
It's considered a canine officer, yes.
Okay. Was Dex at any point deployed?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened when Dex was deployed?
So when Dex was deployed, and again, I can't speak on behalf of the canine officer, immediately the dog will kind of poke the person around a little bit first, and then it actually latched onto him, and I can't remember where. Okay.
But you saw the dog get deployed.
Yes.
And then you said that it sort of Did you say snips?
Yeah, kind of sniffs a little bit, first, and then again, it's almost like a tactic the dogs use to like surrender now or whatever.
Okay.
But at that point, it didn't work, and the dog bit him.
Almost kind of like a warning shot of some sort?
Sort of.
Okay. But then Dex actually latched on or bit?
Correct.
Okay. When Dex bit the subject, what happened?
At that point, the dog now was latched onto him. The subject stood up and began fighting with the dog.
Okay, and tell us about that.
So it looked like the dog had him, he was biting like the inner thigh area, and so I'm facing you, and the dog's here.
You're pointing down towards your stomach or?
Yeah, kind of like towards my lower region area.
Okay.
So the dog, it appeared to have latched on there. I wasn't sure. I didn't see the dog bites or any of that.
Okay, that's fine. And you said that the individual, the subject, was fighting with the dog.
Correct.
And explain that.
So at that point, the dog still gave, the dog's biting, and the handler's still giving him orders to comply, like, walk towards us or give, again, I was more focused on where his hands were going.
Okay.
I wasn't really focused on what the canine handler was saying. I just know there was a point where...
right now, I'm not asking you what the canine handlers were saying.
Right.
I'm asking you what you saw with regard to Dex.
I just saw him latched onto the subject.
Okay. And you said that the individual was fighting with Dex.
Correct.
Okay. And that's what I'm asking you about.
So he was punching the dog.
Okay. And describe it. Explain to the jury, what was he doing?
So if the dog's biting me here, and he was kind of just hitting the dog on the top of the head.
Okay. Since you made a motion, I have to make a record of it. For the record, the witness had both fists out and left and right actions, punching with the closed fist down towards the lower region of the body. All right. And so with both hands, the individual was punching Dex.
Correct.
And did you see anything else happen to Dex?
I saw when it's almost like an old wrestling move where the dog kind of was picked up and then dropped on his top of his head. Like he picked him up and then dropped him on his, that's when we all jumped in.
Okay. So you saw the individual punching Dex. I'm not asking for an exact number, but if you can approximate how many strikes.
I don't know, maybe more than 10 times.
Okay.
Sure.
Fast?
Quick.
Okay. And then you saw Dex being picked up by the individual, is that right?
Correct.
And then slammed down?
Slammed down.
On what part of Dex's body?
Like towards the top of his head. So like where he was being latched, where the dog was latched at, in between the lower region, he was just kind of slammed down.
Showing you people's 115. See this photograph?
Yes.
Do you recognize this area?
I do.
What is that area?
That's the backyard of the residence. There was kind of like a barbecue pit somewhere, I can't remember.
Okay. Where Dex was slammed down, what part of Dex's body hit the ground?
I believe it was the front of his head, his snout and whatnot.
Okay. Was it on cement, was it on grass, or something different?
It was on cement.
Okay. Did Dex make any noise?
Small yelp, maybe.
Okay.
Which
At that point, you saw that this subject was now fighting and actually potentially going to hurt Dex. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I think you said that was the point that the other officers all came in to detain the individual.
Yes.
Why did you decide to detain him at that point?
At that point, we saw he was preoccupied, and we didn't want the dog to get injured.
Okay. So what did you do to try to detain that subject?
Once, I believe, Corporal Bennett removed the dog from the bite, we took the subject to the ground, at which point he landed on his stomach.
Okay. And was somebody giving commands for the subject to comply?
Somebody at that point was saying to put your hands behind your back.
Okay. And was that person complying?
No.
What was that person doing?
That person kept his hands under his waistband.
And why does that matter to you?
Again, he was a person wanted in a possible homicide, and we had not searched him yet.
Okay. But why does it matter that their hands are under their waistband?
That's a commonly known area for people to hide weapons.
Okay. And were you concerned for your safety?
Yes, sir.
So to try to gain compliance, what did you do?
I personally punched the subject about 6 times in the rib cage.
Okay. And why punch him in the rib cage?
It's an area where I'm not going to give him brain damage or anything like that, and it's a soft, meaty area, and the pain compliance will probably have him release his hands.
And you had other means of compliance, is that right, to implement?
We could have, yes.
Did you have your baton with you?
I did.
Okay, but you did not use that?
No.
Okay. Did others use baton?
Nobody batoned him at that point.
Okay. How at some point compliance was made. In other words, he gave up. Is that right?
Correct.
How did that happen?
Once after I had punched him a couple of times, I was able to get his left arm out from under his body. I remember that being placed in the handcuffs, and then his right arm stayed under his body, and I was able to find a baton that one of our officers was using, and I was able to sort of corkscrew his right arm out from under his body.
Okay. But you were not using the baton to hit him?
No, sir.
You said that you punched him approximately 6 times in the rib cage. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you punch him anywhere else?
In the face.
Okay. And how many times did you punch him in the face?
Maybe 3 times.
Did any of those punches, those strikes, did they assist in gaining compliance?
Yes, sir.
How so?
Once he would stop kicking, and the other officers were trying to hold him down.
Okay. And you mentioned that he was kicking. Describe that. Explain how he was kicking.
So he's on his stomach, and at the time when we sort of, I guess, a gang tackle to hold him down and gain compliance, he was flailing, not with his arms, but with his body and kicking his legs. So he was kicking other officers.
Okay. How many officers were there?
On top of him at the time was maybe 4.
And he was trying to kick other officers. Did he kick you?
I was on the side, but I don't remember.
You may have got kicked, but you can't recall?
Correct.
All right. All right. You said that you were able to get one of the other officers' batons.
Yes.
And try to pry his hands out. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you successful in doing that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And at some point, were cuffs put on his wrists?
Yes, sir.
Just describe how that was able to happen.
So once I actually gained compliance of his left arm and passed it back to an officer, that handcuff was already applied. So we had one on him. And then when I was able to get the other arm out with the baton, that other handcuff was applied.
So once he was in handcuffs, what did you guys do with him?
We immediately, at that point, we'd search him. Again, officer safety stuff. We don't want to pass him on to medical yet because we haven't searched him. Once he was searched and was made safe, somebody walked him out. I don't remember who walked him out and provided him medical service.
Did paramedics or somebody come to the scene?
We walked him out to the front.
Where an ambulance was or something?
Correct.
All right. And to be fair, were there any weapons found?
No.
And do you see those keys in that photograph?
Yes, sir.
And do you know if those keys were there after he was taken away?
They probably were there after they searched his pockets and stuff.
Okay. Showing you People's 240. All right. So do you see where the end of the vehicle pursuit is on this photograph?
Yes, sir.
Will you point to that? And that's on High Grove and Buena Vista, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, will you show the jury the path that the subject left after the end of the vehicle pursuit?
So once the vehicle was disabled here, he got out and ran along the sidewalk here. I followed him. He made I guess it'd be an east turn towards this. There's a small brown fence here that he leaped over, and I lost sight of him in this area here.
Okay, so you lost sight of him near the 2765 Buena Vista address?
Correct.
And where you just indicated the jury is also depicted on this photograph with a dotted red arrow, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then where was the subject apprehended?
Right here on Derby, in the backyard.
It's a little washed out, but is that 858 Derby?
Yes, sir.
Do you see the person that was finally apprehended here in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Where's that person?
He's sitting over there with the white mask on.
At counsel table?
Yes, sir.
Identifying the defendant, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ross?
Exhibit 241. I take it you are familiar with this area because you have patrolled this area for a number of years. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Trying to get a sense of distance. You see where we have the 1027 Winthrop
I do.
dot. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And we see where arrests made. Approximate distance between those two dots?
I don't know, a couple blocks, maybe. There's
Okay.
a elementary school on the east side and then a park.
The 1027 Winthrop dot in the Carl's Jr. Approximate distance?
Couple miles.
About the far distance in the lower left, the Swanson Wallet found. How far is that from the Winthrop?
That'd be a couple miles.
About from the Winthrop to the Arco gas.
That's more than a couple miles. That's almost the whole zone that area covers.
Okay. And then lastly, you see at the top bus stop to the Winthrop
Yes.
address. How far is that, do you think?
I'm going to say roughly about, because I drive that every day, so about maybe 8-9 miles.
Okay. Somebody yesterday testified that they walked that distance. It took them about 50 minutes. Does that sound about right?
From the bus stop
Yeah, to walk it to the Winthrop.
to the Winthrop?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good walker.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Prior to, at some point, you're behind Officer Velasco, and the three of you, the Raptor truck, Officer Velasco's car, and your car, the three of you are winding through various streets of Corona there, through residential neighborhoods. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And at least at this point, there are no red lights flashing. Is that correct?
Initially, no.
Thank you. And during this time, did you see any potential vehicle code violations being committed by the Raptor?
At that point, no.
So I have a vision of the three cars going through the residential neighborhood at an appropriate speed at that point. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And then eventually, did you see the red lights on top of Officer Velasco's car go on?
I did.
And how long was it until, in terms of either distance or time, whatever you're comfortable with, how long was it until the Raptor pulled over after those red lights went on?
From the moment I saw it,
Yes. No, I'm sorry. From the moment the red lights go on.
it wasn't too long after.
Okay. You go into the three of you go into the cul-de-sac, you whip around the cul-de-sac, and the Raptor stops, correct?
Yes, sir.
Behind the Raptor is Officer Velasco's car, correct?
Yes, sir.
And are you behind Officer Velasco's car, or to the side, or?
I am directly behind it.
Okay. And she's giving instructions place your hands out the window, correct?
Yes.
And you see two hands emerge from the window, is that right?
Yes.
And those hands stay there until eventually they go in, and the car, as you said, slowly drove off, correct?
Yes, sir.
The truck. How long were those hands hanging out the window?
And from the moment I opened my side door and started getting my equipment, I don't know, maybe a minute, less than a minute.
Okay. And when the third unit showed up, shortly thereafter, you said the truck drove off, correct?
Yes.
So that you said, at least in your report, you said it was about a minute. While the two of you were sitting there, the hands were out the window, the third unit shows up, and then the car drives away.
Well, it was a minute when I went around the car and saw his hands.
Thank you. All right. You left, and then eventually you end up at the, what was the Mountain Gate Park, is that right? You saw the truck going to the Mountain Gate Park?
We ended up there after a couple of...
Right, in the parking lot of Mountain Gate Park.
Yes, sir.
And I think in your report you noted that you didn't see any vehicles or pedestrians in the Mountain Gate Park at that time, correct?
That is correct.
You said that, at least in your report, you said that after the car stopped in the cul-de-sac and then left again, the phrase you used in the report was a low-speed pursuit was now initiated. Do you remember writing that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you characterized it, at least in your report, as a low-speed pursuit,
yes.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
You eventually end up in the driveway at Derby, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you and how many officers, if you recall?
At that time, maybe 10 already.
All right.
10, about 10 at that time.
And I have a picture of the 10 of you standing there trying to decide how do we approach this situation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Trying to determine whether, in fact, the subject that you're pursuing is in the house, correct?
Yes, sir.
At some point in time, you notice up in the window that you showed us on that picture a subject standing there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Green baseball cap, correct?
Yes, sir.
As far as you're concerned, that's the same guy you've been chasing, yes?
Yes, sir.
Are you the first to notice him up there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you say, hey, there he is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Everybody turns and looks?
Yes, sir.
When you're looking, what do you see?
I just see him standing at the window.
Okay, so he's literally just standing up there. Is he looking down at you guys?
I'm assuming so.
Okay, you don't know. No.
I don't know.
He's facing you guys.
Yes, sir.
Did you see him eventually exit, leave the window?
Yes, sir.
Approximately how long were you watching him and he looking out towards you?
It was a quick glance. I looked up and I saw him.
Okay.
I don't know, 30 seconds that I saw him.
Say, hey, there he is. Everybody turns and looks, and we've got the 10 of you standing there watching him, and then he leaves. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You're then deciding what do we do next, and that's when you get word that, what word do you get?
Somebody over the radio said that he was in the backyard.
In the backyard, okay. So you form, like you called it, a conga line, and you guys head into the backyard on the east side like you showed us on the picture, correct?
Yes.
Is Officer Bennett with the dog, is he first in line?
I believe so, or number 2.
Number 2, okay. And why is he not number 1? Is there a tactical reason for that, or?
Yes, because we want the lead officer at least to have some type of lethal cover
Okay.
for the dog, because the canine's responsibility is the dog at that point, not the dog and the gun.
Okay, so I imagine the lead officer gets to the edge and basically wants to peer around the corner to see what he's dealing with, correct?
Correct.
Okay. By the time you get around the corner, I think you told us you were probably were you right behind the dog? Or?
I was like number 3, yes, sir.
Okay. So by the time you get around the corner, what do you see?
I see a subject lying on the ground.
Okay. On his stomach?
On his left side of his body.
Okay. And is his back to you, or is he facing you?
Back was towards us.
So you can't see the face, correct?
Correct.
Cannot see the hands, correct?
Couldn't see the hands.
And you're most worried about the hands, I'm guessing, yes?
That's my main concern at that point.
Sure. So at this point, Officer Bennett begins shouting commands, show us your hands, show us your hands, show us your hands, correct?
Correct.
And while he's doing this, you tell us the dog is barking, correct?
Yes.
Now, by this time, have all 10 of you emerged from around the house?
No, we're still behind cover.
Okay. So, but you're able to see.
I'm able to see, yes.
So are you peering around the corner of the house, or how is it you're able to see?
I can't really remember, but if I were to do it, I'd probably be pie in the corner with my weapon pointed at the subject.
Okay. So you want cover, but you also want to be able to see what's going on.
I do.
Do you know, and I know they're behind you, do you know what the guys behind you are doing?
I don't.
Okay. Do you know what they're supposed to do?
In a normal entry, we do an entry to a home. They kind of just fall in line.
Okay. So they're waiting, if they follow procedure, they're waiting for you to move, correct?
Right.
If they're following procedure, they're not going to go around you.
They're not.
So I have a vision of the number 1 officer who peered around the corner, and then the number 2 officer, Officer Bennett, with the dog. They're basically exposed out there looking, correct?
Correct.
And you're number 3, you're using the house as cover, correct?
Yes.
As the officer is yelling, show us your hands, and as the dog is barking, what is the person lying on his side doing?
Nothing.
No movement.
No movement.
In fact, I think you said earlier you weren't even sure if he was conscious, correct?
Correct.
All right. At this point, could you see that the screen had fallen out of the window?
At that point, I didn't. It was after the fact.
Okay, all right. So at this point, you don't know whether he's jumped out of that window or not.
I don't. Well, no.
All right. But he's lying on concrete, correct?
Yes.
How long, and I know things are kind of hectic, how long does Officer Bennett say, show us your hands, before he releases the dog?
I don't know, sir.
Okay. Between the time he says, show us your hands, and he releases the dog, do you see this person lying there move at all?
He started moving once he was bit.
Okay. But before the dog gets there, he doesn't move?
No, sir.
When the dog gets there and you said pokes around or sniffs around with his snout, does the person move?
No.
You said did the dog go around and bite him on his front of his body or the back of his body?
I don't remember where the initial, but I remember how it ended up.
And how did it end up?
I just remember seeing the dog kind of latched onto his groin area.
Okay, his groin, where his penis would be.
Correct.
Okay, so the dog's jaws are chomped right here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. This gets his attention, yes?
Yes.
And how does he react when the dog chomps right there?
So now so again, I didn't write the report for the canine handler, but when I came around and saw the dog and the dog latched onto the subject's groin area.
Yes.
I don't know initially how the guy got up.
Okay. So
Light popped up.
So you see the dog interact with him. You see the dog now chomp in his groin area, and then the next thing you know, he is standing.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. And he is, at this point, trying to fight off the dog's influence, correct?
Yes.
So I have a picture of him standing there with the dog right here, and he's doing this to the dog. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And you said that at one point he took and he smashed the dog down against the concrete. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. But while he's doing this, the dog is still latched on, correct?
Yes.
All right. So after smashing the dog onto the concrete, what then do you see next?
We start moving in.
Okay, because I think you told us he was distracted with this motion, so you took that opportunity to move.
Correct.
And do basically all 10 of you move in to try to subdue the situation?
No, it's a small arrest team.
Okay. So I think you told us, so let me ask you, were all 10 guys that were in the driveway, were they all part of your conga line?
Yes.
Okay. So did all 10 guys in the conga line participate in subduing, or just?
It was like 3 or 4 of us.
Okay. You don't want too many people in the driveway.
We don't want to suffocate them.
Okay. So you use this opportunity to come in and affect the handcuffing. Is that right?
Correct.
And while you're doing this, at least when you first come in, the dog is still latched on. Is that right?
After he slammed the dog on the ground,
Yes.
the dog yelped, or whatever you want to call it, squealed. Which point we took him to the ground and he landed on his hands.
Right. But I think you told us that eventually Officer Bennett gave the order to have the dog released. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't testify on his behalf, but I'm assuming he'd said that.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Just briefly, when you saw the subject, or who you identified as Mr. Martin, on the ground on his side, you said that you didn't know if he was even conscious, right?
At that point, because he wasn't moving, we don't know what was going on.
Okay. So you don't know if he's feigning being unconscious or actually unconscious or somewhere in between.
Correct.
But you don't want to take that risk.
Correct.
All right. And with regard to Dex the dog, at some point the dog, and do you know if the dog, exactly where the dog bit Mr. Martin?
I didn't see the pictures, photographs. I just, in my mind, vividly, I could just see that it was in that area.
Okay, so it could have been inner thigh or somewhere around that area.
Correct.
Okay. At any rate, it was in that area, and that's when Mr. Martin was fighting with the dog.
Yes.
So at some point, the dog had to have unlatched from the groin area, though. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because I think you said that when Mr. Martin slammed the dog down head first, it was the snout that hit.
Correct.
Is that correct? So obviously it was not latched on at that point.
No. Well, I'm assuming that the impact, the dog released that bite.
So was the dog, so was it like a pile drive or?
Yeah, I was going to use some WWE verbiage, but yeah, it was like a pile drive.
Okay, so Mr. Martin went down with the dog and the dog's head or snout hit the cement and then unlatched.
Yes.
And made a yelp sound.
Yes.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you. All right, thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. Jensen? Witness excused?
Yes.
You're excused. Thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our afternoon recess at this time. Remind all of you to discuss facts of this case amongst yourselves or with anyone unrelated to the trial. Not former express any opinion until you've heard all the evidence. We'll